What's up, YouTube? We back with another review. This is season 1, episode 3. DandaDan. Let's get it. And so it starts off on a psychic game show. And this mysterious psychic is trying to guess random facts about this famous teen idol. And so she starts to guess and tell him things about himself. But every time she answers, they're all wrong. And so everybody's like, man, what? You're a psychic? But you guessed every answer wrong. And so the showrunners of the show, they're saying, hey, should we upload this, man? She got every answer wrong. This is embarrassing. And so moving along in the anime, this mysterious psychic, she leaves and goes about her day. And as she's in her taxi going home, the taxi cab driver says, hey, dude, are you really a psychic? He says, I don't want to disrespect you, but I mean, you got every answer wrong on that TV show. And then out of the blue, she says, hey, let me out. And she says, if you don't want to get hurt, you better hurry up and get up out of here. Huh? And as the anime continues, it goes back to Momo. And Akaran transformed into Turbo Granny. He's hovering over. He has malicious intent. Is he going to kill her? What's going to happen? And suddenly out of the blue, a nail inside of a barrier gets thrown at him. And he flies in the lake. Oh my goodness, what was that? And this old lady, she says, Momo, you brought in another scumbag? He's not even human. You brought in some evil creature. And so she challenges to a 1v1. And so as they start to squabble, he comes up behind her with a sneak attack, but it doesn't work. He's engulfed in flames, and he's thrown into a barrier that she had made beforehand. She says, I knew you would do that. Come up behind me and hit me from my blind spot. And as Turbo Granny tries to attack and come out the circle, he can't, because every time he comes and try to attack, his body lights on fire. And she tells him the reason why, because she set a barrier by placing a nail inside of a circle. She's protected from all of his attacks. But if she puts a nail outside of her circle, anything outside of it will burn. And so he's essentially trapped inside of a circle, and if he steps out, he'll burn to death. And so they're facing each other. She goes up to him and she says, come on, attack me. And obviously he can't, because he's stuck inside the circle barrier with the nail outside. And if he comes at her, he'll burn. And as he's coming towards her, he's still burning. But he says, I'm going to kill you, old lady. You can't keep me trapped. She says, I don't want to trap you. I'm going to kill you. And so, boom, she hits him with the bat. And as she's wailing on him, she's tearing him up. She says, hey, stand up, stand your ground. Come on now. She's just giving him the beats. Oh, my goodness. And as she trolls it, she says, you can't use your speed inside of that barrier. And he says, hey, if you kill me, you'll kill the human that I have inside of me too. And she says, I don't care. I'll kill anyone who deceives my grandkid. And so she puts up another barrier and hammers the nail down and proceeds to kill it. And so in the next scene, it goes up to Momo, and as she's awakened from her unconscious state, she realizes that, hey, where's Akaran? And so she's in a panic. She runs downstairs. She tells her grandmother, hey, I have to tell you something. But her grandmother's already guessing it. She says, hey, you been to a spiritual hotspot? She says, no, not really. My friend has. And I'm looking for him. She says, who, the evil spirit? She says, I already killed him. And Momo says, what? That was my friend. And her grandmother antagonized. She says, hey, but you don't believe in spirits, remember? And she says, how long are you going to hold that against me? She says, spirits aren't real, and I'm a fake psychic. Remember? And so Momo, she swallows her pride, and she apologized to her grandmother for telling her she was a fake psychic and she didn't believe in ghosts that she told her about. And so going forward, she tells her, hey, the spirit that you want, he's in that shrine. And Momo, she goes towards the shrine to see where Akaran's at. She's worried. She's stressed. Is he dead? Is he alive? She's wondering. And so she gets to the shrine. She opens it up. She says, Akaran. And he answers her. He says, hey, I thought I killed you. She says, 4 eyes, I thought you were dead. You're still alive? He says, yes, I'm alive. I'm sorry that I'm alive. And she slams the door on him. So she thinks to herself, man, I'm so irritated. I was so worried. She has feelings for Akaran. How sweet. And so out of the blue, her grandma pops back up. She says, hey, you into monsters like that? She says, no, it's not like that. And she tells her, hey, while he's inside the shrine, he won't turn into a monster. But if he steps one step outside of it, he'll go back to Turbo Granny. And she tells her grandmother that Turbo Granny has taken his you-know-what. And the only way he can lift his curse is if they go fight her in the tunnel. And she also goes along to tell her grandmother that she has psychic powers now. And her grandmother's surprised. She says, what? She tells her the lore on how she got her powers. She explains to her grandmother that after she had that UFO incident, things started to change in her. And that's when these new powers arrive. And her grandmother is shocked. She says, "What? UFOs? They don't exist." And after they're going back and forth, she says, "If I don't use my psychic powers on Akaran, he'll turn back to Turbo Granny." And so soon after this, her grandmother gives her the lure on Turbo Granny, on how back in the day, she was known for her speed and how evil she was. She also then tells Momo that she's actually went and visited her one time, but she was so powerful that she couldn't do anything about it. She also tells Momo about these location-based spirits and how no spirit medium would ever try to challenge these spirits in the location that they're attached to. They become too powerful. She tells Momo that Turbo Granny has actually been infused with this location-based spirit, making her too powerful to beat, and that she shouldn't go against it. She'll die. She said, "This is not your responsibility. Just forget about that guy." Momo says, "No, I'll fight against that Turbo Granny and I'll protect him." And so her grandmother says, "Okay, you want to go that far, then you'll have to go play tag with Turbo Granny." She tells Momo that she'll have to lure Turbo Granny from her territory to make her weak. And after they lure her from her territory, they can defeat her. And Momo says, "Hey, I can't run with these little legs." And she says, "You're not going to be the one that's going to run against her. It's going to be Akaran." Momo tells her grandmother, "Hey, can't you just put up a barrier and stop this thing?" And she says, "No, she cannot use her powers outside of her territory where she lives at." And so she tells them both, "Hey, y'all have to strengthen y'all powers. Y'all have to get better. Akaran, you have to get stronger. Momo, you have to get better with your physical powers." She says, "I won't be able to help y'all, but I'll train you." And Granny says, "Hey, we'll start tomorrow." So the next scene, it goes to Akaran talking to Momo. He tells her, "Hey, I'm sorry for being so weak when we fought that monster. I couldn't do anything about it, but you were so strong and powerful and beat it." He says, "Next time we go against something like that, I'll be ready." Momo then tells him, "Shut up, you're overthinking." And then she tells him, "Hey, but you were pretty cool in that fight." But she says, "But you're dumb, so I'll probably have to save you next time." Oh, they're bonding. And so we move on to the next day. Akaran is going crazy because he has to use the bathroom. But the problem is Momo has to stay with him or he'll turn back to Turbo Granny, so she has to watch him go pee-pee. And so Grandma asks her a question. She says, "Wait, how do you even control this thing anyway?" She then explains to her grandmother that she sees an aura around him. And when she squeezes that aura, she can take control of Turbo Granny. She also explains that everything has an aura, big and small things, and she can control those things, but only in a limited area. And so her grandmother said, "I thought the psychic powers would be stronger. Those are pretty weak." And then Momo explains to her, "Yeah, when my powers first awakened, she said she felt invincible. But she said shortly thereafterwards, her power has been weakened." And so her grandmother tells her, "Hey, close your eyes." She says you rely upon your vision too much. And so Momo does it. She closes her eyes and she reaches for the aura. She feels the aura to the touch and she says it's cold. And she asks her grandmother, "How am I doing?" And her grandmother says, "Hey, he's transformed back." And she says, "What?" And so it goes back to Akaran. He says, "Hey, I can't take this any longer." He says, "I have to go." And so he bursts off and he runs towards the bathroom. Momo then blocks him. She says, "Hey, you can't be taking a crap in people's restroom." And so as the next scene goes, all three of them have a race to the bathroom. And so the next scene is Akaran taking a dump, with Momo's right there trying to control the power of Turbo Granny from coming back to him. And he says, "Hey, this is humiliating. I'm tired of having this curse on me." He says, "I want it to be lifted." Shortly after, grandmother tells Momo, she says, "Hey, that power you felt when you was invincible, that most likely was your original power." She says, "Huh? That's cool." He says, "Yeah, but it's a pain in the butt because you would have to train every day hard to get back to that original power." She says she don't know how long it may take. She also says that's fine because Akaran's power is going to take a while too. Then so afterwards, Momo opens the door back to Akaran, and he surprisingly turned back to Turbo Granny. And what's even more crazy is that she's cursed her grandmother, and now she's bleeding from her nose, and Akaran is unconscious, and he's bleeding too. And so Turbo Granny tells Momo, she tells her, hey, anybody that Akaran has looked at, she can curse. And she says, don't underestimate me. She says, if you don't come to the tunnel tonight, she'll curse everybody around it to death. And so as they're leaving to go off to the tunnel, grandmother gives them some special uniforms for warding off evil demons and spirits and things like that. And so as they're leaving, she stops Momo and she tells her, hey, don't die. And she gives her a hug. Shortly after, Momo tells Akaran, hey, I'm going to defeat Turbo Granny. She tried to hurt somebody I love. And so, guys, that's pretty much the end of the episode.